When we find ourselves in a jam and we're unsure what our next step should be, though we claim we trust God, it can be difficult to trust God to open a new path for us. It's particularly unnerving when we ask for God's help and God's response seems foolish to our human ears. Consider the response the Hebrews received from God when they became trapped by the Red Sea after they escaped slavery in Egypt. Pharaoh's army was at their backs, and the chaotic crashing waves of the Red Sea was in front of them. They were trapped, and sarcastically they asked God and Moses, "Was it because there were not graves in Egypt that you've taken us away to die in the wilderness?" God responded by telling them that there was no way but my way. Make camp for the night, and I will provide you a means to escape in the morning. Just imagine what the Hebrews might have thought when they heard God's bizarre response. God, are you sure? I don't think this is going to work. The Hebrews had nothing, no boats, no way to cross the sea. They were stuck at the edge of the Red Sea, and God told them to just wait. God's command to wait seems about as nutty as Jesus' statement to Peter in the Gospel of Matthew. After Peter was approached by fellow tax collectors, he rushed into the place where Jesus was staying and reported that they had to pay the temple tax. Jesus' solution was for Peter to go fish. Though omitted by Matthew, I imagine Peter, who always protested when Jesus told him to do the impossible, might have silently protested Jesus' instructions, thinking, "But Jesus, money doesn't grow on trees, and it certainly won't be found in the mouth of a fish. Surely, this is not going to work." Surprisingly, though lacking faith, God displayed great power. And in the Exodus account, we are informed that God drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night and turned the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided so that the Israelites went into the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. For myself, I'm grateful God fulfills the promise to care for us and provide a way out when there seems to be no way, especially or even when we momentarily doubt. I'm thankful because over the summer I confessed I doubted, just for a moment, mind you, but I protested God's bizarre response to my prayer saying, "Surely, God, this will not work." This happened after I shortly arrived in Iona, and if you recall from last week, I foolishly traveled with only a credit card and no cash. And though throughout England and Scotland I had no difficulties paying with my credit card, it was only when I reached the island of Mull to travel between the two ferry ports that I needed cash for the bus, which led to, as you know, an intriguing adventure to reach Iona. And I'm not going to repeat that story now, but here's the thing. As I stood out looking at this strait, I realized I'm going to have to figure out how to get cash so I don't repeat that interesting adventure. So now I'm standing on the island of Iona where credit cards are accepted everywhere, but no one offers cash back. And of course I have a dilemma. In 2 weeks I have to travel back to Farrenport. And then I have to take a bus to Cregner, and I need cash to do that. And therefore, as I'm staring out at the sea, I prayed. And the response I received was an image of the Abbey with a bench by the front gate. And also in my mind's eye was the image of an older couple walking toward that gate. The gentleman would be wearing a light blue coat and a cane. His spouse would have a black coat. This was in my mind's eye. And I said to God, that doesn't make sense. And God said, don't worry, they will have cash for you. And again, I said, no way, that doesn't make sense. Why would they give me cash? And I remember thinking, surely, God, this is not going to work. However, the image in my mind remained persistent. So resigning to the fact that I was going to have that image stuck in my brain all day and never go away unless I actually did it, I decided to walk toward the Abbey. And sure enough, there was a bench by the front gate. And it's where I saw God said, I need you to wait. And this is an interesting thing because I didn't know this part. To gain entrance to the Abbey, visitors who aren't staying there, because I was a guest, I was going to be staying there, but visitors to the Abbey have to purchase tickets. And so, as I waited on the bench, shortly the ticket booth opened, and sure enough, here comes this older couple, just like in my mind's eye, walking toward me. The gentleman with a cane and a light blue coat, his wife is wearing a black coat. And as they entered the gate, I politely asked if they were planning to purchase their tickets with cash. And though they were a bit perplexed by my question, they said they were. And then I explained the whole situation, pretty much a nutshell. I didn't have cash for the bus, I got stuck, got kidnapped, all that stuff. You guys know that story. And so laughing, they said, sure, we'd be happy to help. So I went in and purchased their tickets, came out, and we exchanged tickets for cash. And I clung to that cash like it was gold. But I had my way to return to Cregnor in 2 weeks. Thankfully, even though I had earlier protested God's abilities, God made a way where there seemed to be no way, just as God had done for the Israelites and just as Jesus had done for Peter. And as I think about Peter and the Hebrews and how similar we were in our protests, I also notice a second common theme. Though we protested, we did what God commanded. I went to the Abbey as instructed, and the Hebrews made camp and waited at the shores of the Red Sea as they were instructed. In the end, trust was placed in God instead of in attempts to do it our own way, nor placing faith in our own cleverness or ingenuity. Admittedly, it's not always easy, nor without some measure of danger, to obey God's voice and live into God's instructions. But God's promise is clear. When you pass through the water, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. Perhaps this promise causes our eyebrows to furrow or raise. We might point to bombings on trains in London, or innocent victims hurt or killed by white supremacists or other hate groups, and wonder how God is fulfilling this promise to care for us. We might even feel like the person in the famous painting by Edvard Munch titled Scream. Like the person in the painting, we might stand with our fists to our temples before a blood-red sky which seems to spiral out of control. We announce that we have been baptized with fear, and we are afraid our names will be erased and forgotten. Yet God stands in our midst and proclaims, I am with you. You may be surrounded by walls of water or feel trapped by the enemy, but I remain with you, and I remain your God. I will never abandon you, for I am with you. My rod and staff, says God, are at hand to help you cross through these times of hardship so you can pass safely to the other side. We, like the ancient Israelites, are told that we can count on God's power and God's presence and God's steadfast love when we face our own sea crossings and hardships. As one author noted, we are assured that God is with us when we face the sea crossing of a new school year with unfamiliar teachers, classmates, and subjects. God is with us when we face the sea crossing of a new job with unexpected challenges and responsibilities. God is with us when we face the sea crossing of a lost relationship with feelings of regret, uncertainty, and self-doubt. God is with us when we face the sea crossing of a serious illness with sadness and fear, exhaustion and pain. God is with us when we face the sea crossing of a death in the family and when terrorists strike, with our shock and anger, our confusion and grief. God remains with us, staying close at hand, even when we protest and challenge God's commands. Yet through it all, God remains. And when God remains with us, we see bizarre things accomplished when we take the first step forward, believing that God can provide a way where we didn't see one before, and God can stop the storms that threaten our lives. In our New Testament, there's another famous sea crossing. Jesus' disciples were at sea without Jesus. And in the morning, Jesus began crossing the sea, walking on the water toward them. At first, they were terrified that Jesus was a ghost. But as he drew near, they recognized him. And Peter immediately asked for permission to stand on the water with Jesus. And he was amazed because first Jesus said you could. And then as he's standing there, the wind began to pick up and the waves began to grow larger. And Peter began to sink. He cried out, "Jesus, save me." And Jesus reached out, caught Peter, and lifted him up back into the boat. And when they're all gathered together, Jesus asked, "Why did you doubt?" It's a good question. It's one I still ask myself. And it's one I'm sure we all ask ourselves. That even though I finally went to the Abbey and waited on the bench for these two persons, I've had to ponder that incident. Why did I protest? Why did I doubt? Perhaps is a question we consider ourselves when we face storms or become trapped by chaotic waves. Why do we doubt? Why do we doubt God will provide a safe passage? Why don't we immediately trust the voice of God and believe that God will give us courage and victory in the middle of our struggles? Why don't we believe that God will see us through the storm and deliver us safely to the other side? As we ponder these questions, I share with you this prayer titled, The Brayton Fisherman's Prayer. The sea is large and our boat is small, but with God, we never sail alone.